everybody. Welcome to another episode of Love Handles All here at AllGo. My name is Nyemade Boiwu. I'm the Chief Content Officer with the AllGo app. We are an app, we are a plus-size review app for people in larger bodies and those who love us. I'm so excited to bring you another love story today. Today I have Sierra and Kerri with me, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about them. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Before we dive into the love story, do you just want to introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about you?
Sure. Go first.
You go.
I'm Sierra. I just turned 40 this year, and I have strawberry blonde hair, have glasses on for people who are watching, and I'm wearing a green top and or listening, I mean. And I live in Seattle, and I love cats and playing D&D and rescuing other animals. We have 4 cats and 3 dogs.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a very busy home.
And I'm Kerri. I use she, her pronouns. I also turned 40 this year, but 2 months after Sierra did. So she's the old lady of the relationship. I'm the young one. Yeah, and I think she did a good job kind of summing up our life.
Nice. Well, to start off, how did you two meet?
So we met online on OkCupid. I was, doing what you do, looking through, trying to find someone. And Sierra was one of the only people who had a real smile. So that was like what first drew me to her. There was a lot of the, duck face.
Mm.
And I was just looking for someone who was showing up as themselves. We had a lot of similar interests. She had a very specific profile, not just I like stuff, but here's the specific stuff I like. So that also drew me to her. And so I reached out, and she said she was looking for a Pisces. So I highlighted all the things we had in common, and then said, by the way, I'm also a Pisces.
Nice.
Yeah, to which I replied, should we exchange rings now? That was my very first response to her, because we both had very similar things in our dating profile. I always have just really gravitated towards Pisces energy for some reason. And I also at the time was like really into the musician Sleeping at Last and the Enneagram and tarot and all of that. And so I had that in my profile, and so did she to an extent. And I was like, wow, what are the odds?
Right. What's your sign, by the way?
I'm a Capricorn.
Oh, nice. No, I love that. So you guys met on OkCupid. What was your first date like? And also, how long did it take you to go from online to meeting up in person?
That's a good question. I don't remember how quickly from the first moment that she reached out to me to when we had our first date. It might have been 3 days. So I think maybe she reached out on like a Wednesday, and we made a date to see each other that Saturday. And this was October 26, 2018.
But before we could meet in person, she said, we have to talk to each other on the phone first. We need to talk to each other. I need you to hear my voice. So if you think my voice is bad, I don't want to go out with you.
Well, and I also felt like I needed to get out some, I needed to understand expectations and consent around when you first meet. Are you a hugger? Do you want to have your physical distance? What is your expectation as far as physical touch? And so that was my other reason for wanting to call.
Yeah, that's an easier phone conversation than text conversation. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
what did you do for your first date?
we went, there is a board game shop slash restaurant here in town. We met up at, and because we did have that consent conversation at first, we had agreed that hug would be okay on our first meeting. And I was so nervous. I remember like seeing her in the board game shop and just like locating her and then just beelining straight, kind of like, okay, found you. You take care of me now.
Yeah. And she's a lot shorter than me, like 3 or 4 inches shorter than me. And so when I saw her, I felt like I just like enveloped her into me.
Mm.
I was like,
Oh,
oh, you know.
I love this. So that was 8. So how long have you been together?
I can't do the math.
Since 2018.
Yeah.
So all this fall will be 5 years.
Nice, very nice. So when you are out dating, because part of why, as I mentioned before, we're AllGo app, we're a plus size review app, because sometimes it's hard to find places that are, accommodating, easily accessible, things like that. Did you run into any of those problems while you're dating, either with each other in the past?
I definitely have, like with very conscious of when I go to a restaurant or a coffee shop that there's seating that's comfortable for me and that I can fit in, very mindful of booths, right? And like if I'm sitting at a table with a pull-out chair, not wanting that to be going into the hallway, right? Or the aisle, right?
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
be obstructing the servers that are going by or anything like that. So I'm always really mindful and really grateful that Kerri is mindful of it too. So we encountered it a little bit when we first started dating, but it's really more prominent for us now that we both, when we go out, make sure that we check the booths to make sure that they're not attached to the wall. And the first thing she does when she sits down is pull it close to her, which is like very sweet.
It's like such a little thing, but it makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And also taking some of the pressure and responsibility off of me to call ahead and see what type of seating or services are provided if it's accommodating to my size as a super fat person.
That's wonderful that you do that and that you think of that, because sometimes loved ones don't think of that. And then, like you said, all the burden is placed on you. What was your dating history like before Kerri?
Well, before Kerri, I only ever dated men. So
Okay.
that was new. That's not entirely true. I dated a couple women before I met Kerri, but for the most part, all of my long-term relationships were with men. And I was married prior to getting together with Kerri, divorced, and living my best life.
Did you ever feel like your size held you back from dating or made it harder to want to put yourself out there?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so much. And I feel like my relationship with my body and my sexuality were very much kind of enmeshed and restricted in a way, right? I was really, I think, I felt like I had to fit into what society expected of me, right? Like I needed to be a heterosexual, feminine woman that supports her man and that will get married and have kids and have a house with a picket fence, and I realize now in retrospect that it was just compulsory heterosexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really explore my sexuality. I didn't really explore my body. Like my relationship with sex and sexuality was like sorry, our dog is being a
He
bit
feels
whiny.
it deeply what you're saying. He's like, oh, my poor owner.
My relationship with my body and sexuality was like, it was in service to a man, right? Like my body didn't feel like it was of my own. When I was younger and I was on the dating apps, as a super fat person, a lot of the people I feel like I would interact with were only interested in my body. And I felt like we never got anywhere further than that.
Mm.
And so I kind of just, at that time and throughout my pretty much the majority of my dating career, was like, I will conform to whatever it is that a man wants me to be, right?
Mm.
And that's the only option for me. And I just have to make it work, and I really thought that that's what relationships are supposed to be like, right? Your partner isn't your best friend. It's not the person you want to hang out with all the time, right? It's like, I just was a service to this partner, right? And it wasn't mutual. And I did have struggle, with my self-esteem and feeling like, well, this is the best I can get, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm just, this person is kind to me. They're not ashamed to be out with me in public, so I'll just take what I can get kind of attitude, right?
Mm. And then, so you were saying, like, you found once you started accepting your body more is when you also started exploring and accepting your sexuality more.
Absolutely. I went into kind of my journey was that I in 20 made the decision that I was going to leave my ex in like 2016, 2017, and I went into treatment for an eating disorder. And that was when my eyes kind of started opening of the fact of like, oh my gosh, this whole time, no wonder why I was in so much pain, because I was like conforming and trying to like fit myself into this box that was never intended to be for me. Like, it wasn't designed for me. Like, it might work for somebody else, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I never thought that I could even question that box that I was put in until I started to do that deep inner work and healing in, my recovery process.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that journey led you to Kerri,
Yeah.
who I want to ask Kerri a little bit about, like, your dating history and your preference. Have you always dated like bigger women, plus size women, or are you like across the board? Or actually, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to assume that you only date women, just across the board in general.
So I also had been married to a man for many years, and through my own process realized that was not who I wanted to be with. And so when I finally started dating women, Sierra was actually the second date I went on.
Lucky me.
And lucky me, I didn't have to be out there too long.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that like the size of the person I was dating wasn't really consideration or something that I was thinking about. Like I mentioned, like Sierra's, I was really drawn to her profile because her smile was so genuine and real. And that is what initially attracted me to her. And I mean, she's got this beautiful red hair and she has pretty eyes. But yeah, I was just like looking for any woman in whatever body they had. And she was the one.
That's awesome. Have you, because sometimes not a lot of times, but sometimes in relationships where someone is in like a larger body and someone is in a smaller one, we often find like they want to keep it hidden, or they don't want it out loud. And part of that is they're afraid of like the opinions of their family and friends. Did you run into any of that, or did you have any concerns about any of that?
I didn't have any concerns at all. No. I think through being with Sierra, of course, I've become more mindful of how I can be an advocate for her as someone in a larger body. But it wasn't, it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm a fairly small person. And I would, like remember conversations with my friends and being like, oh, I am so big, like it's something everyone does, right? But I guess like hearing my friends say things like that, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're just regular size, right? And my friends are on the smaller size too. But really, you know, and then I met Sierra and getting to know more about her and her journey and thinking to myself, like you're just a regular person, you know, like, and I think part of that is or came from my own lack of awareness of people who are in larger bodies and the type of you know, oppression that they can face, and they're just by existing, right, just by being in the world. But the other part of it too for me is like every person has a body, and our bodies are great just the way they are. And so, you know, thinking that I might hear some bad comments or my friends or family might say something negative wasn't really a consideration for me. And in fact, if that had been something that I have heard from them, then that would have been my sign to reevaluate those relationships, right? If you can't accept me or my partner just because she's fat, then I'm not sure you're the right person to be in my life. So we didn't have to go through any of that. But that definitely would have been the questions I would have started asking otherwise.
Yeah, and those are valid. I'm glad that you guys are able to love out loud, you know, in multiple ways. I think that is amazing. And so I always preface this that I'm not trying to start any problems, but I do like to ask you if you could identify what your partner thinks is your biggest pet, I always get this mixed up, tongue-tied when I start to say it. I would like you each to tell me what your partner would say is their biggest pet peeve. So like Sierra, what do you think Kerri would say her biggest pet peeve about you is, and vice versa?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I think that Kerri would think, that Kerri's pet peeve of me, right? Is that, it might make me cry a little bit.
Oh no.
Is that I don't see myself the way other people see me. And that's really hard for her to hear, that I really struggle, because that's just not the way, from her perspective. My perception of reality and of who I am is not actually what is happening most of the time. And so I think that is a pet peeve of hers, of me.
I don't want anyone being mean to you, including you.
Including me. Yeah, she says it to me all the time. I don't want anybody to be mean to you, including you.
Valid. Is that correct? Would that be your number one?
You know, and now hearing her say that, yes. My other one was not quite as deep. It was not being direct.
Not being direct. Yeah.
But
I think that's related, right? Like, I think that my lack of confidence sometimes and belief in myself comes across with a hesitancy to want to be direct because of my fear that it's going to result in rejection.
Yeah. That's valid. Yeah.
What about my pet peeve of you?
I think yours of me is when we're like having a discussion that's kind of an argument, but it's only an argument because I keep saying the same thing over and over because I don't feel like you heard what I said or understand it, but you don't care. You've already moved on to the next thing. I described that right.
Yeah. So she really, so if we go back to Enneagram, so I just learned that I'm an Enneagram 6 when I thought this whole time I was a 2, which is the helper. And so I'm all about like, you know, caretaking and stuff. It turns out that's not the case, but she is 100% a 5, which is like the investigator or
thinking knowledge,
all things knowledge. And so what really frustrates me sometimes is that I can like elaborate a story, right? And she will interject and be like, well, wait, that's not exactly how it went. Because it's not about correcting me. It's about making sure I have the facts right.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, what does facts matter? Like, we're just telling a fun story.
Yeah.
But it matters, and that is important.
I hear you. So she's correct as far as what your pet peeve would be?
Yes.
I love it. Well, what are the top 3 things you love about each other?
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
You are very kind, generous, compassionate, caring. You want to save the whole entire world and everyone in it. And I mean, those are kind of all the same, but you just have a really, really big heart, and are very passionate about the things you care about, which is everything. And your hot bod.
The 3 things, that was way more than 3, honey, if we're getting accurate.
I actually getting nervous. I had to make sure I said enough stuff that it counted.
The 3 things, only, that's okay.
You can stick to 3.
Yeah. Things that I love about you, that I most love about you is how non-judgmental you are of literally everyone in the entire world. Where I want to save everyone, you want everyone to be themselves and to not have to experience judgment ever. And I've never known what that was like, because I'm a very judgy person. And I think it's really amazing to see other people in the world through that lens, right? And in that same regard, you 100% are always authentic. You're always yourself. And I love that about you. And you are very smart. And where I struggle, you are strong. And you're just my best friend.
I love that. Those are both fantastic and wonderful. Thank you both so much for talking to me today. Before I let you go, I always like to say the part of why I started these is because I wanted to see love stories that weren't around when I was younger. So if you could talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
You don't have to grow up and marry a man just because that's what everyone thinks you should do.
Yeah. I think mine would be pretty similar, but not as specific, more open-ended, which is always trust your gut, because that will never lead you astray. And I think for so long, I always felt sick and anxious and depressed, and I didn't know what was causing it. And it was that there was a part of me that knew I wasn't being true to myself. And when I got those things aligned, it was like the whole world opened up to me, you know?
Yeah. I love that. That's great advice. And again, thank you both so much for joining me. I love these conversations. I love getting to hear more about your love stories. And thank you those who are watching at home or watching this later. And if you're not, please make sure you are following us. All right. Thank you again so much, Sierra and Kerri.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely.